Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Triathlon England's Big Reboot 2021 Conference Week. I'm Helen Marney, and I'm delighted to be kicking off what we hope will be an amazing few days of connecting, learning, sharing, and looking ahead, hopefully, to an exciting future for our sport. Before we begin properly, I'd like to hugely thank our presenting partner, Yellow Jersey, for their support, and invite Ryan Georgiades, their Managing Director, to say a few words and formally start proceedings.
Thanks for the intro, Helen. Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan, founder and Managing Director at Yellow Jersey. We're British Triathlon's bicycle and travel insurance partner. Thanks for joining this evening. Absolutely amazing initiative from British Triathlon to host a week of workshops to re-engage our community and hopefully get us all ready for the post-COVID era. And what a year we've had. Special thanks to all the key workers within the triathlon community, of which we know there are many, for helping to keep us safe over the past year. We've been working now with British Triathlon for about 6 years, and we're absolutely, phenomenally impressed with how the federation reacts and their agility to react to the world around us, and most importantly, support the triathlon community. It's safe to say it's been a bumpy year for our sport, and events and travel stopped. We've not been immune, to the impact that COVID has had. But I think today, hopefully, again, marks a real step forward into all our futures. And the one thing that we can take from what's happened in the last 12 months, and one amazing thing, is the extra millions of people that have dusted off old bikes and bought new ones, and lots of people that have discovered and refound a passion for running. And we hope as a community altogether that we can encourage all of these new enthusiasts to become the triathletes of the future. Like many people in the room, we started our business as a passion. We're all triathletes who work in insurance. And our business was set up, to meet the needs of initially ourselves and friends and family, obviously the community as well now. We've developed our business and grown with the sport, and we're now a full service insurance brokers offering.
You've just gone on mute there, Ryan. That's it.
Yeah, sorry, someone muted me. So I didn't realise it was quite that boring, but I'm not far. Insurance is boring. We're just here, I think what I was saying before I got muted was that we're now a service broker, and we're here to support not just the enthusiasts with their bicycle and travel insurance needs, but also people in the room, coaches, event organisers and clubs. We want to ensure the whole community remains safe. This year in particular, and we want to take the clubs and events forward and help put money back into the sport, and at the same time provide everyone with great cover. So anyway, enough from me. Really looking forward to the week and seeing how the conference goes, and raring to go. And over back to you, Helen. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Ryan. Much appreciated. So yeah, as Ryan rightly set out there, and I think as everybody knows, the last year has been pretty challenging for pretty much everybody in society, globally, etc. And the sports sector is absolutely no different, is it? We've been sucked into that, same as everybody else. As a national governing body, we've spent large parts of the last year poring over government guidance, as many of you may well be doing, either in your role in sport or in other day jobs that you might have. And then, of course, developing our own guidance to support our community, whether that be clubs, coaches, event organisers, individual participants. And hopefully that's enabled delivery of some semblance of swim, bike, run out there in communities across England. We've also contributed to and led at times thinking around the sector, around how events and activity outdoors can be delivered safely during the pandemic. We've joined partners nationally in developing some of that thinking, and certainly how events in that time trial format that we were able to facilitate some of last summer can be done, and you know, writing some of that guidance was a really important part of our work last year. But of course, that's the role of the governing body, isn't it? And we take that on proudly for the benefit of our members, you guys as our workforce, and obviously the participants out there as well. Where we've seen the most innovation and drive and perseverance is amongst the people on this call, and you know, out there across our landscape, of course. So our clubs, our coaches, officials, volunteers, whether it's coming up with different ideas of delivering engaging content online, or whether it's being able to deliver one-to-one coaching sessions where that's been available. That's been absolutely essential to keeping our sport going over the last year when we've been able to do so. And we're obviously really, really grateful for all of that innovation across the network. So we sit humbly, really, alongside you at the start of our return to play. This should be a good one.
You're like a circle that floats around me, keeping me safe and sound. And when I fall, you tied a rope to me. You're blessing me every day. I was down with an illusion, like a sparrow with broken wings. But now I shine with your reflection on me. I'm getting back up on my feet. That you showed up was written in my palm. You are a statement, explode like a bomb. I get to push myself to victory. You make me winner. You cut me loose and set me free. You make me win in every way. You showed me how to spread my wings. Yes, I'm the winner of the day. You cut me loose and set me free. You make me win every way. You showed me how to spread my wings. Yes, I'm the winner of the day. Yes, I'm the winner, yeah. 'Cause I'm the winner, yeah. Am I awake or am I dreaming? So far gone, I won't look back. And when I move, there ain't no stopping me. You're pushing me up to the top. I saw the clouds looking angry, but then the sky reached my mind. And when I space out, I see the possibilities unfolding the way that I want. That you showed up was written in my palm. You are a statement, explode like a bomb. I get to push myself to victory. You make me winner. You cut me loose and set me free.
That video is very much sort of designed to showcase a very different year for a sport, obviously, but a great year nonetheless. And, you know, we're an outdoor sport, aren't we? So we consider ourselves lucky to have actually managed to do some activity. And it's great to be able to see some of that stuff, you know, lounge, triathlon, strange swimming techniques in paddling pools. But, you know, it's all great stuff. The Big Reboot Conference then this week is really intended to bring people together who are at the heart of our sport. It's supposedly giving you all a space to sort of reconnect with some old contacts, meet some new ones, and explore the interesting and insightful topics that we've got on offer. We've got a great lineup of speakers throughout the week, you know, and I'm going to be really looking forward to connecting and myself learning a great deal about what's going on. And of course, as Ryan set out at the beginning as well, it's to supercharge the start of our activity to swim, bike, run, now that organised outdoor sport at least is formally open, and indoor sport, fingers crossed, is not too far in the future now for adults as well. So 2021 as well, from a workforce perspective and a coaching perspective, is a really big year for us at Triathlon England. We've got some fairly big, bold plans to invest and develop in our workforce. We're shortly going to be setting into motion a root and branch review of our sort of workforce pathway, and that will include a review of policies, systems, qualifications, how we deal with single disciplines, for example, and all sorts of things encapsulated within that kind of workforce pathway. We'll be consulting and talking to people throughout the sport more extensively than we ever have done before. So we will be out there over this year talking to coaches, clubs, volunteers, activators, technical officials, etc. Everybody that is involved in progressing our sport. We want to be talking to you guys to see how we can support you. We want to assess how we can build that extended workforce with all the strength, expertise and support that we need to grow. We've started some of that work already. Hopefully, as some of you will know, we've updated and strengthened our approach to safeguarding, and we've got new standards in place for coaches and activators now. 3 months into that new education programme, and the tutors that we've got within our network have delivered 45 courses so far to 539 coaches across England. So for 3 months, that's no mean feat. And, you know, if there are any tutors out there or people that have connected into that programme, a big thank you to you. By the end of the year, all of our 3,000 coaches and activators in England will then have that in-date gold standard safeguarding qualification. They will have achieved it through us or potentially through another national governing body or another local organisation that's set up to deliver it. So it's really great stuff, and more to come really this year is the message from me. So nobody wants to listen to me, really. We want to speak to Andy Salmon and Johnny Riall through our keynote. So we've got some questions for you guys, and just to introduce, they're on the screen now, pinned in front of you. Hopefully everybody can see that. I certainly can. So yeah, just to introduce Andy Salmon, our CEO there in the middle, or in the middle for my screen at least, and Johnny Riall. So Andy's the CEO of British Triathlon and Triathlon England, and Johnny's our Paralympic head coach and also the triathlon team leader for the Commonwealth Games. So thanks both of you for joining us this evening. Obviously busy people, so it's great to have you with us, sharing your reflections on the challenges we've had over the last 12 months and also opportunities, aspirations for the next, 12 months but beyond really, isn't it, as we restart. Right then, we're starting with Andy. Certainly been an interesting year to lead a national governing body of sport. Tell us how it's been from your perspective and perhaps a few of your reflections.
Thanks, Helen, and hi everybody, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. Yeah, I think, Helen, to your question, when I got this job 3.5 years ago, there was certainly nothing in the job description about pandemics or national crises. So it's been, you know, a year of the unexpected. We've seen that word unprecedented overused so many times, haven't we, over the last 12 months. Some of my reflections, there are so many, but I think the need for constant decision making, I think particularly at the beginning of lockdown one, you know, from the end of March 2020, for the next 2 to 3 months, it felt like we were making really detailed, considered decisions, and then a week later they were out of date and we had to start all over again. You mentioned government guidance in your introduction, and of course from a British triathlon perspective, we had eyes on the English legislation coming out of Westminster, but also the Welsh legislation in Cardiff and the Scottish legislation in Edinburgh. And that was really challenging as well. And, you know, I don't think we've got any politicians on the call this evening, so I can speak freely, but I think it's very fair to say that the English guidance that we were trying to process throughout 2020 was less than clear. So constantly we were trying to figure out what they were actually intending, because what they were actually writing wasn't necessarily translating through into our world of swim, bike and run, wasn't giving us the clarity that we needed. And I think one of the highlights for me last year was towards the end of June, early July, when we really said to DCMS, that's the Department Culture, Media and Sport, the government department that looks after sport in England. And we said, look, this is what we're going to do. You've got 7 days to tell us we can't do it. And if you don't tell us we can't do it, we're going to do it. And that was one of the riskiest things I think we did in the whole 12-month period. But we did it with due consideration, and it paid off. And actually, you know, we then worked with British Cycling, with England Athletics, UK Athletics, swimming to a lesser extent, and we collaborated a great deal. And hopefully we got some clarity for many of the people that are on the call this evening. So that was really key. I think other reflections, you know, the obvious one that everybody in work has probably had to adjust to is adjusting to working on Zoom and on Teams. And for me personally, living in Scotland, and I suppose the upside was, that 350-mile journey each way every Monday and every Friday wasn't necessary anymore. But losing the connection with the team, I found really, really difficult. Now, Zoom and Teams are great tools. They're fantastic platforms, but there's nothing like face-to-face contact. So that's been a real adjustment. And I'm personally looking forward very much to commencing with that, or resuming with that commute back down to Loughborough. More philosophically, I think there was a real challenge to balance our optimism. I'm sure if we did a quick straw poll now on this call tonight, we'd generally have a very, very optimistic group of people, because that's our nature, right, in swim, bike and run. But to balance that desire to return to play with what we were very clear about, which was the greater need, which was to protect the national health of the nation. We couldn't just push too hard for a return to activity too soon. And particularly, I think, working with event organisers, probably more than any other stakeholder in the sport, being sympathetic to the local area in which those event organisers were operating was tricky. I was very struck by, again, that word optimism and the can-do attitude, again, of many of the people that are on the call this evening, our clubs, coaches, officials, event organisers, athletes, participants, activators. Everybody was so positive throughout. And I consider myself very lucky to work in swim, bike and run in this fantastic sport, because most of the year, perhaps not in the depth of winter, we can do all three disciplines one way or the other, can't we? Many of us. More difficult when pools are closed, of course. But other sports, other colleagues I deal with who look after indoor team sports, for example, they just had to close their doors and they just couldn't do anything. But thanks to the energy, the enthusiasm of people in our community, the sport did keep going in some shape or form. And I'm so grateful to everybody in our community for keeping the sport open. I can't almost finish my answer, by the way, Helen, but I can't finish reflecting on the year without reflecting on technology and virtual activity. Some of the things that we've seen, some of the challenges that people have taken on have just been phenomenal, often raising huge amounts of money for charity, which of course have been so adversely affected by the lack of events through 2020. The Super League Triathlon, and again, the Arena Games in London a couple of weeks ago, and then Rotterdam this weekend, just fantastic adverts for the sport. And I'm sure Johnny might pick up on the introduction of some of the para-triathlon races that we saw at the Arena Games. And of course, Zwift. I finally got permission from my wife to buy a Wahoo kicker before Christmas, and I've joined the army of people who are addicted to Zwift. It's just it's a great phenomenon, and I think virtual activity is something that will be here to stay. To what extent, none of us are really sure. I don't think it will take the place of outdoor activity, but I think it will complement it very nicely. And I think my final reflection is just, again, you touched on it, but just how we've become closer to so many other organisations, whether it's government, whether it's Sport England, whether it's governing bodies of athletics, governing bodies of swimming, governing bodies of cycling. Almost forgot the third discipline there. So that's been a real feature. So loads of positives. And yeah, loads of optimism looking ahead to the future.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I mean, the potential of that virtual is interesting, isn't it? And through some of the stuff that I've done, some sports kind of have got that opportunity more than others potentially, and we kind of have got that opportunity, haven't we? And how much we kind of progress that over the year will be probably quite important, and being guided by clubs and coaches as well would be really interesting. If you had to pick perhaps one lesson that you've learned most over the last 12 months to take forward into the future, what would it be?
Mm-hmm. It's probably because I'm quite an old guy. I guess it's not so much a lesson, but a relearning or a reaffirmation of something that I've long believed, which is about, well, it's two things really, but they're connected. One is clarity, clarity of purpose, and the other is keeping it simple. I really believe in keeping things simple, and it's so easy in our world, particularly with all this guidance kicking around, to just get completely lost in complicated stuff. And what we did, as you know, Helen and Johnny, is almost 12 months ago now, we set out 3 principles for how we were going to deal with this crisis. We had no idea whether it was going to last for 4 weeks, 4 months, 4 years. We just had no idea. But we said, right, number one, first and foremost, we're going to take great care of our people. Secondly, we're going to provide leadership through effective communication. And thirdly, and this was, I think, a point of difference to many of our colleagues, was to deliver our strategy as best we could, despite the challenges. And I don't think we realized at the time just how those three principles would stick. And they guided us, didn't they, through so many difficult decisions that we took over the next 12 months or so. And I suspect will carry on guiding us, because I don't think it's not all easy sailing from here. There are going to be some stumbles along the way. So yeah, keeping it simple and providing clarity, Helen, would be my conclusion.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm going on to now to sort of swim, bike, run, restarting up and down the country, I guess. Maybe not so much today, as everybody is sat in beer gardens, no doubt now. Potentially some of these people, these 75 people, are sat in beer gardens right now. You never know. But now that we have got that ability, certainly from an outdoor perspective, a fair bit of our sport can restart and has restarted up and down the country. Now that we've got that ability, and let's assume that it will continue and there won't be another lockdown, let's think positively. What are your kind of biggest hopes for the coming season and also beyond as well into the future?
Yeah, how long have I got to answer that one? Yeah, I'm hugely ambitious. We maintained a positive mindset throughout last year. We didn't slash our costs to save money, to protect our financial reserves. We decided very consciously that we would lose a lot of money in 2020 in order to keep the staff on board, to keep our workforce engaged and develop programs for this moment, really, for when things started to unlock. So, I suppose the first obvious thing I'm hoping for is that, nationally, globally, infections are kept, at a manageable level, and hospitalizations and deaths just fall to zero. Yeah, that's what we all want. But on that foundation, I'm really desperately keen to see events returning, which they are doing. We know that events are permitting every day with us now. We've had events already. But to see new people coming into those events, so that events that were operating at maybe 70 or 80% of capacity in 2019 are now actually establishing waiting lists. So it creates demand for more events in the future, and it helps our event organisers to bounce back from what's been a brutal 12, 15-month period for that part of our community. As you know, I'm really passionate about open water swimming, and I'm so excited about the work that you and your team have done over the winter months to be ready to launch to consumers next month, a program where we can really give people an opportunity to really engage with open water swimming in a very safe and controlled environment, really enjoy. I suspect many of the people on this call know what I'm talking about when I say that the sheer joy of open water swimming. Swimming in a pool is great. Open water swimming is just a different thing altogether, a different experience. I look at the backdrop behind us now, and just that connection with the environment. So super excited about the opportunity there to grow the number of venues that operate open water swimming and the number of people that enjoy it. In no particular order, of course, we're very, very focused right now on Tokyo and July and August, and Johnny will talk about August and the Paralympic Games, but just making sure that both our triathletes and our para-triathletes get the opportunity to qualify, those that are not qualified yet or selected yet, that they get the opportunity to prepare to the very best of their potential, and that they get to the start line in the best possible shape, and then they'll just do what they do so well, and the rest will take care of itself. So that's a huge hope for this year. And then looking slightly longer term, to see clubs really bouncing back, really thriving clubs, again, clubs with waiting lists, new clubs setting up, perhaps more diverse clubs, more junior clubs perhaps, and then reaching new audiences. And again, the work that you and your team are doing to really, rather than just growing triathlon in the places where it's easy to grow triathlon, take the sport to areas that we haven't taken it to before, but rather than taking it into those areas and almost doing it to those areas, if you pardon that expression, it's working with those local communities to really introduce them to the joys of swim, bike and run on terms that they dictate rather than terms that we dictate. So really excited about that. And I guess finally, it's only a few weeks away now, but we've got the AJ Bell 2021 World Triathlon Leeds on the 5th and 6th of June. I just think that's always a really significant event in our calendar, but never more so than this year. And if, you know, if we're talking about the big reboot and getting our doors open again, there's a statement to the world that swim, bike and run is on the agenda. It's going to be on the BBC. We're going to have, again, I'll keep stealing Johnny's thunder here, but, you know, we're going to have the elite para triathletes there for the first time racing in the World Para Triathlon Series. So, you know, really, really excited about that event as well.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm quite looking forward to the AJ Bell event in Leeds, because obviously when I started last year, we obviously had to postpone that, didn't we? So I haven't had the delights of experiencing that one yet. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. And a great spoiler alert there, Andy, with the open water swim and stuff like that. But yeah, that's a really exciting thing that it will be able to talk quite a lot more about in the coming weeks. So thank you. Moving on to Johnny now. Got to unmute now. Johnny, can you tell us a little bit about the challenges that sort of your guys, your team, etc., have faced over the last year? How has it looked for you?
Yeah, absolutely, Helen, and yeah, hi to everybody on the call as well. It's in some ways it's been an incredibly challenging year, but I think, like Andy said, as you go through it, there's a huge amount that we've been able to learn from it, and actually there's a lot of things that we're doing now that we'll do for a very long time, hopefully in the future. That almost has been as a consequence of the scenario we faced, really. But I think the first thing that really springs to mind is actually our challenge has been probably no different to everybody else's, and certainly no different to anybody else's on this call. And actually, at a point in time, we've been incredibly fortunate as an elite team to have a certain level of exemption to still be able to go about some degree of our sport. But you know, ultimately the team that we try to support, it's their job. They're professional athletes, and we entered into this kind of last March, and we had 4 months where we didn't see each other, where we didn't have a training session. We then subsequently got our Paralympic Games and Olympic Games postponed, and I think, to be honest, by the time that arrived, it wasn't really big news by that point. It almost felt inevitable, but still, it was just another kind of addition to the year, which was a further challenge to us. I think, being really honest, into lockdown, facing really clear restrictions was reasonably quite easy. You know where you stand. You can't train, and you're not going to the games. The bigger challenge has probably been trying to find our way out of lockdown. Initially, the return to training process, which was kind of June, July last year. You know, you're facing fears, people's nervousness, how to manage our environments. And ultimately, I think as a coach, and similarly to a lot of the coaches I work with and practitioners I get to work with, you have to become an expert in a world that arguably nobody is yet. So to make decisions about how you create safe environments, how you support your staff to feel comfortable about either going back to work or not going back to work, and how you support athletes through that journey, really. But it's been something that we've done, and we've done incredibly well. I'm really proud by how our team, but I think collectively elite sport, has managed that process. So I think, like Andy said, we were in a position where you couldn't go out and train, and we were entering into what was a beautiful summer in the end. It was interesting, actually, because only the September before we'd had a presentation from Zwift. And one or two of our guys used Zwift. It was sort of something in the background there. But I vividly remember quite a few people coming out of there going, I just don't get it. You know, like, I'm a triathlete. I just want to get out into the road. And I can safely say we have an entire team of people who now absolutely love it. The racing, the social element to that, I think the connection that our elite athletes have been able to get with a much broader group of the triathlon community has been fantastic, and something that our athletes have valued, hopefully as much as people have valued kind of being joined on rides by athletes, etc., etc. And I think for me, it was an email last week probably summed up where you talk about a silver lining around it. So we came back from Super League, which was an opportunity that came really quite late, and Super League had 5 or 6 weeks to put an event on, and we of course jumped at it. And it was full of imperfections, but ultimately the experience itself we knew would be a really positive one. And off the back of that event, we're already now in conversations with Zwift about creating avatars that more accurately represent the community of athletes that I support. So people who use prosthesis, or people who might ride a tandem, or actually just trying to create a more user-friendly experience for someone who's visually impaired, who can't necessarily see an iPad. And just none of those things would have happened had we not been forced into like this worldwide need to all be online. So yeah, it's been incredibly challenging. I would probably say right now is the most challenging period of the whole thing, because ultimately we do have a games. International travel is still fraught with difficulties. It's not a fair playing field. There's still countries all over the world who are going to be struggling to travel as of. But similarly, we have a job that we need to try and get done in August. We've got to look after our people along the way. So it's a tricky kind of few months for us to step. But ultimately, I think with the group we've got around us, we'll do the very best we can, and hopefully still put people on the start line in the best position possible, really.
Thanks, Johnny. I mean, it's a great intersection really into you know the Tokyo situation. You talked early on in that bit there, that question about sort of managing the changes last year, obviously when Tokyo is postponed to this year, and obviously potentially has elongated that preparation period, and obviously you're dealing with an unprecedented period where you've got a postponement of a Paralympics over a whole year, and you know it's taken everything out of kilter and out of that kind of 4-year cycle. And I guess I'm just wondering, what does that mean from a athlete preparation perspective? How has that changed your preparation? Do you think it might change even future when you've got 3 years to the next one as well? Just kind of, you know, what kind of different spin does it give on Paralympic preparation?
Yeah, it's a fantastic. The thing that I'm most proud about with the team that I support is like we genuinely are a family, and there's lots of reasons for that. I think a lot of people have overcome certain challenges to find themselves into an elite program. But similarly, it's probably subtly different to some of the Olympic program athletes. Most of our athletes on our team don't compete against each other. Most of them are in a certain category and they compete against their international rivals. And I think that only strengthens the camaraderie between our group, because there isn't necessarily even that competitive edge between individuals. Travel, the get together of a team and the sort of feeling that you're going to go through this experience together has kind of been taken away from us in the last 18 months. And the last time we were together collectively as a team was in the November of 2019. And the next time, arguably, we'll be collectively together will probably be Leeds, and then almost certainly, obviously, the Games. So we had a crystal clear strategy for taking our team to the Games, and it was centered around the fact that it's really hot in Tokyo. So it was quite a nice thing for us to get stuck into, because it's not normally that hot here. So we had to kind of collectively figure out how we were going to do that. We practiced that entire kind of 3 or 4 month run into the Games in 2019 with the specific races we were going to do, exactly the exact venue that we were going to prepare for. So we did a 3-week camp out in Florida. And we've now knocked all of that on the head. We're not going anywhere really in advance of the Games. Absolutely have to from a qualification point of view, and we'll prepare in the UK. Thankfully, we've got an amazing team of practitioners who are collectively across the Olympic and Paralympic program. And thankfully, as it turns out, the Olympic program did choose to always prepare for the heat in the UK using a kind of chamber-based program. So we've been able to gain a huge amount of learning from what they did in 2019. And that's what we'll now replicate. But ultimately, it does mean that we are going to go into a summer of prep that we're not quite as up to speed with, we're not quite as prepared for. We've spent the last 6 weeks kind of doing a bit of a dry run. And I'm confident with what the outcome will be. But I think secondly to that is in 2019, we had presumed and we had practiced for sort of one team preparation into the Games. And I think things have just changed in reality. And I think we have to consider the individuals within our decision making way more than we ever did. And I would be quite proud to say we always have considered individuals quite highly. But, you know, be it within our Paralympic program, athletes who are at a higher risk of catching COVID and the consequences, what that would mean, personal risk and personal preferences around kind of wanting to be within big groups. So we'll run a much more individual program. Some people may not come in together centrally, some may prepare at home. And again, I kind of go back to the Super League event. I was quite nervous actually, because we had a team of 10. It was the most of our team we've ever had together in one place, in a year and a half. And I was a bit nervous about what it would feel. But actually we came away and the energy was probably the most energy I've had in a year and a half, certainly more than in my room where I've been sat for most of the time. So I'm still confident that that kind of family, that team feeling will come back to us pretty quickly. But it's definitely not the kind of the well-rehearsed one plan that we thought we were going to be running into the games with. It's a little bit more kind of fragmented, a little bit more segmented than that, but one that I'm still confident we can deliver to a high standard. Yeah,
fabulous. I've got a couple more questions, but there's some questions dropping into the chat box. Keep those coming, guys. I'll be sort of pausing in 5 minutes or so just to take those questions. So if you do have a question for either Andy or for Johnny or for anything else for that matter, please just drop it in the chat box and we'll pick that up shortly. Johnny, just thinking, moving on to your other hat, really, around the Commonwealth Games and your role there as team leader for triathlon, and obviously it's a home games. It's a great opportunity. I know that you're hugely excited about that, but tell the guys here on the call kind of what you're most excited about in terms of leading out the team.
I think for me it means so much in so many ways. So I've been an incredibly proud team leader of the Paratriathlon program since 2013. And this sits alongside that kind of pride. On a personal level, I volunteered for Team England 20 years ago when the games were in Manchester, and there just feels something really quite nice about being able to have that level of responsibility to then support the team at the next home games. So yeah, it's been that thing in the background that has always helped me see beyond the pandemic. And it won't be pandemic free. I think, we would be naive to think it would be, but it's certainly from a level of motivation, it's given me that opportunity to start to try and plan what the future of sport might look like, the future of triathlon. So we've got an amazing coaching team now in place for that team. We've got our selection policy about ready to go out. We've consulted on that with athletes and coaches, and it just feels like a really exciting opportunity for us as a sport, I think. And I'm responsible for the performances at Birmingham for the England team, but at the same time, I think with my background and the various jobs I've done, and I've been a club head coach and I've worked within the development team at British Triathlon, like for me, it's never about medals. My job is never about medals. My job is about something more. It's what I can control. It's about the environment that I can control, and hopefully, ultimately, the medals that the athletes go out and win in Birmingham, whether they're English, Scottish or Welsh, to be honest, it really doesn't matter to me at all. It's about how we can galvanise those medals and make it mean something to the sport. So I'm incredibly passionate. It's part of how I will hopefully lead that team. It's hopefully how I lead the team to say, we need to go out and try. We need to make those winning medals actually mean something a little bit more. And I've been incredibly impressed by how I haven't seen an athlete on our world-class program say anything else over the last 12 months. So whether it's lead into the Olympic and Paralympics or whether it's lead into Commonwealth, I think athletes recognize the privilege they've had over the last 12 months. And I think they recognize the responsibility they've got to feed back into the sport. And again, incredibly impressed by some of the things that I'm hearing from within different departments, how we as an organisation can hopefully kind of capitalise on what Birmingham can give us as a sport, not just from a performance point of view, but everybody else really. So it comes around arguably once in a lifetime, or certainly once in a generation. And yeah, I'm hopefully able to try and the sport capitalise on the opportunities we've got really in the next couple of years.
Certainly an exciting couple of years ahead, isn't it? Tokyo.
It is.
In Birmingham, yeah. Okay, just to finish then, just before we move into questions from the rest of the delegates here, perhaps just ask you both to sort of leave us a bit with a sentence or a word that personifies your overall thought, feeling, whatever, on our future as we reboot Swim, Bike, Run. Don't mind which one of you wants to go first.
I go, Johnny. I'd like to keep it simple. So for me, it's one word, and it's growth. I just think we've got this. We did have, back in 2019, we had an incredible opportunity to maintain and increase our rate of growth. Now, I think out of the adversity of the pandemic, I think that's only increased in significance. So I feel a sense of self-inflicted pressure, if you like, on behalf of the team. I think we've got some real work to do to make that happen. But I think the conditions, the market conditions, the environment, the nature of our sport, the people that are involved in our sport already provide us with a fantastic opportunity for growth.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Johnny, what about you?
I'm not going to be able to be as good as Andy. You know me. It's only 4 words. There's a level of collaboration and success, a collaborative success, and I've just written a huge future, because it's probably similar to Andy. Like, I feel so excited by what this sport can go on to do, and I already think it's amazing. But I think the way we're going to do that is by collaboration. And like, I've worked at Triathlon since 2005, and genuinely the way that I see colleagues around me, but the way that we are able to engage and the way that the community engages back is more open than I've ever known it. And I see our performance vision and our performance mission, and they all have elements of the bigger picture in them, which again, I think performance is quite often over somewhere and out of the way. So yeah, I think we've got more opportunity to collaborate, and I think the future of our sport is it's as big as we want it to be, really.
Thanks, Johnny. The lesson there is never ask a coach or a CEO to give you one word answer at the end. That's really great. All that stuff's really interesting and exciting. So I'm going to pass over to Will now, who's going to take us through the questions that we've received through the chat box.
Thanks, Helen. Yeah, there's 1 or 2 in there. I think probably there's a couple that relate. Andy, I'll probably send over to you around financial impact of the pandemic. And there's one specifically from Paul Schroeder around the impact upon membership and how we're working to mitigate against that and to encourage new members in the near future.
Sure, thanks, Will. I'll keep the financial bit brief because I could put everybody to sleep, I'm sure. But in a nutshell, the financial year that we've just finished wasn't as horrendous as it was for some other governing bodies, but we lost a significant amount of money within the Triathlon England part of the business. But within the British part of the business, we actually made a bit of a surplus, and the two cancelled each other out. And we made a bit of a surplus really because we didn't do Leeds. We didn't do a lot of the things that Johnny and the Olympic program would have done. So they evened each other out. Looking ahead to the next year, we're budgeting to make a loss of about, in round numbers, about £400,000. Now, this is the bit where I could get very boring, but basically it's a kick-on effect from last year. So the financial impact of falling membership and a complete lack of event permitting income tends to have a kick-on effect into the following financial year. So we'll actually feel the pain in this year that's just started. So our financial year starts on the 1st of April 2021. So, as I say, this year we're going to lose about £400,000. Now, we have financial reserves. We had a very, very good year in 2019-20, and we have financial reserves for the proverbial rainy day. And if ever there was that proverbial rainy day, then this pandemic is it. So that's enabled us to say, no, we're going to carry on doing the work, as I mentioned earlier. We can accommodate that kind of a loss, and we can hit the ground running when things open up. To the question about membership, Will. We've lost in England 4,500 members during the pandemic, so that equates to about 17.5%. That's very, very significant for us. Membership is a critical revenue stream for us, alongside event-related income from permitting and day membership. We've worked very, very hard to retain the members that we have retained, and I think we've maintained a very good retention rate through the pandemic. And just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen an increase in sales, people buying membership in addition to people renewing who are already members. So we've got lots to do. We are trying to do everything we can to make membership as appealing and as relevant as possible. And I think in the olden days, governing bodies would try to sell a membership product that they wanted to sell, rather than try and figure out what it was that the customer wanted and give the customer that thing. That's very much our approach. I'm not saying we've got it right yet, but we're heading in the right direction, making member benefits more relevant. Of course, we've got some fantastic insurance benefits with many of our partners, some of whom are on the call this evening. So yeah, lots to do, but yeah, it's been a real tough year for membership.
Thanks, Andy. We've got then a couple, one from Rosa and one from Christine, both related to restarting of regional junior race series and how we as an organisation will help that to happen and work with regions, with clubs, with coaches to make sure that happens in the right way.
Yeah, and I don't really have, I'm afraid, Will, a sort of detailed answer to that, other than yeah, we just want to help. We totally recognise the issue that's inherent in I think there's a couple of questions on that topic. Yeah, and we just want to be supportive to help the clubs, help regions to come up with the best possible solution.
Thanks. I think it's important to say there's one or two other questions that we picked up where if we can't respond to those this evening in detail, we will pick those up and we will come back to individuals in due course. It may be that it's regional managers or other parts of our team. We will respond to any questions that you have. You also have during the week opportunities for drop-in sessions with some of our staff. So if you do have specific questions, both tomorrow and Thursday at 6 o'clock, there will be staff on hand to be able to pick up some specific questions. There's one final one that's come in, and I won't put Johnny on the spot too much, but we've had a question around medal aspirations for both Olympic and Paralympic. I guess we can pick up this year, but we could also look ahead for another 3 years and see where we end up for Paris.
Yeah,
we're recording this, remember, Johnny.
No, it's brilliant. No, it's all good. I think we're a British team, and we have medal aspirations at every event we go to, whether that's at the Olympic Games, the Paralympic Games, Commonwealth Games. And I think you only again need to look at events like Super League and some of the things that some of the home nation athletes have done over the last few weeks. We have some of the best athletes in the world, but this might sound a little bit kind of cliched, but ultimately my job is only to control what we can go out there and control on behalf of those athletes, really. So I would say too often governing bodies and sports teams will get so hung up on this is how many medals we can win. And as a coach, my job is not to go out and win a medal. So yeah, ultimately we've got an incredible plan, I think, that takes into consideration the year we've had and the year that we're going to have into the games. And I think we'll have the absolute best prepared athletes in both the Olympic and Paralympic Games as a consequence of the team and as the federation that we work in. So I think if any team is going to go to those events with a genuine opportunity to win multiple medals, it'll be the British team. So we'll see how many medals that is, but we can only go and try and do the best job we can.
Thanks, Johnny. We do have one more. It's quite a specific one from Rosa, so that's one I'll propose that we pick up aside from this around youth age group rule changes. If there are no other questions, I'm going to hand back to you, Helen, because I think that's the end of the questions that we've got there, and conscious of time as well.
Absolutely, Will. Thank you. Just to reinforce what Will says there, we will send out either directly to those people that have asked questions that we've not answered, or generally everything that you've asked there. So yeah, it's 20 past. We're kicking off with workshops at sort of 1:45, and want to make sure that there's a break in there for people to have a cup of tea, stroke, get to the bar, wherever it is you are this evening. So before I send you off to those workshops, just a few pieces of important information for you to consider, some of which you may know, hopefully you do. Part of the conference entry includes a free t-shirt for all delegates. So if you haven't already done so, remember to use the link in the email that you will have received from us to tap into the online shop. You'll be able to order your t-shirt directly through that online shop. They are free, although you'll have to pay postage to your address. So make sure you pick up those t-shirts. I'm told they're quite good, actually. Hopefully I'm not just get this one, I'll get the one at the end as well. At the beginning, there was a slide there that mentioned around social media and promoting the conference. Obviously, it's taking place over the next 4 days. So kind of please share with us any thoughts, reflections, etc. that you've got along the way. Use social media to do that. We've got the hashtag, the Big Reboot as well for that purpose. So yeah, please over the course of the week, as you're sort of connecting into and out of workshops, use that to share your thoughts with us. At the end of the week on Saturday, you'll receive a virtual goodie bag via email. So that's various kind of offers that are just exclusive to conference delegates, really, that our partners have kindly contributed to us. So watch out for that email in your inbox at some time on Saturday. And also on Friday at the end, then we'll send out a feedback form. So I know that, you know, it's an extra couple of minutes of your time to give us some feedback, but this is kind of the first time that we've invested in a conference week, particularly for, you know, coaches, clubs, etc. So we're really keen to hear your feedback on how you found the week, what you found useful, what you'd like more of, less of, etc. So please do complete that form if you're able to. Just as a thank you for all return forms, we'll enter you into a prize draw for a private session over Zoom with one of our athletes as well. So a bit of an incentive, hopefully, to complete it. Okay, so workshops are starting at 7:45. So we've got coaching females or virtual events and training. So you'll have to pick one of the two. That starts at 7:45, finishes at 8:30. And then the final session this evening is 8:45 until 9:30, which is mental wellbeing. Hopefully everybody has received the conference program through email. So there are unique links for each of those workshops. So you'll need to go back into that email and look at the links in there. You'll need to do that over the course of the week as well to ensure that you've got the correct link for the correct workshop. I think they're on the chat box as well. Will or Michelle have just dropped those in there for you as well, so that if you haven't got that to hand, you can use the chat function just to connect to the right one at 7:45. You will receive daily reminders as well in your inbox. So we will be badgering you all week, rest assured. So yeah, just reminders of the workshops that are taking place each day, times and the correct links for you to use for each one. So have a great week. Hope it's of real value to you. Please let us know how it goes. And yeah, enjoy your evening, guys. Thank you very much.